Good morning, welcome to Subjective. I am thrilled and honoured to be talking to the wonderful Susie Bick this morning. Good morning, Susie.
Morning.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Good. Now, I tried to Google to find a picture,
There
because I know you work with Serge Lutens.
Once.
But you had to tell him about the shoot, but because he would paint everybody white, very, very hard to see who's who. But tell me about this picture you did with him.
Well, I never ever saw it. I don't know if it ever came out.
Right.
But I was very excited, but it was actually years later. It was probably when I was in like almost 30. I got booked to work with him in Paris for Shiseido.
Yeah.
And so I arrived at the studio and there's a huge cauldron of wax at one end of the makeup table.
Excellent.
With a woman, everyone was all in these black cloaks, all the makeup and everything, people.
Yeah.
And there was a woman stirring this cauldron and I was like, what's that for? And they were like, we're going to wax your face. And I was like, I didn't really have any hair on my face, but they were going to like wax my whole face and my skin was like, I don't know. Anyway, in the end they decided not to because they didn't think they needed to.
Right,
but I was just like fascinated with this cauldron at the end of the, and a little bit freaked out, to be honest.
Well, one would be.
I was a little bit. I was a little bit because I was like, do I have a choice in this? Anyway, they decided not to. And then Serge came in, was like this incredible kind of, almost like somebody out of a movie. He just sort of walked in and hardly spoke, and then got all his brushes out on the table and kind of, you know, like pianists sort of run their hands on the keys of the piano from one end to the other. Yeah. He did that with all his pencils and brushes and just went like that. And all the brushes sort of went perfectly, all kind of rolling over. And it was like this performance.
He's like a silent film character.
Yeah.
I photographed him once. But he has that look. He could be from a 1920s silent film.
And then he did this incredible makeup on me that was like kind of Garbo. He sort of did this sort of amazing, I'd never had makeup on like that before, with these big sad eyes and like incredible.
Did he paint your skin white?
Yeah, I was completely pale with like grey kind of, you know, I mean, he was, amazing, amazing makeup artist. And he was the photographer that day as well. Yeah.
I'm not sure when he did that sort of crossover, or whether it was a crossover, he's always that way.
And he didn't speak to me at all when he was photographing me.
I think he's a fascinating photographer.
Yeah. Have you even photographed him?
I photographed him with Angelika,
so
Huston, weirdly.
Yeah.
And they were friends, I guess, back from the day. And I was doing something for German Vogue, and I photographed them together. And he's great. He's like, you know, little sort of...
very mysterious character.
Yeah, but super gentle and lovely and everything else. Yeah. But real character.
Yeah.
That's the one.
Yes.
I take it that's you.
That's me.
Good, hurrah.
Yes.
It's always embarrassing when I get my research wrong.
Well, it's hard to tell with the Dior ones because so much
it's a bit the Serge Lutens thing. It's a bit the kind of being painted white. But this is Tyen.
Tyen, yes.
Right, tell me a little bit, because you were the face of Christian Dior maquillage
for quite a few
years.
Yeah. So Tyen, when I was in Japan, I was 17 in Japan, and Tyen had come over. It was all very exciting. We were like, oh my God, Tyen's in town, you know. My agent was like, do you realize who this is? And he's booked you for a job. And I was like, oh my God. So he did my makeup for a little film whilst he was there. Yeah. And he just said to me, he said, if you come to Paris, he said, I'd love to work with you. And I thought he was just being nice. I didn't literally think he was serious. But I remember looking in the mirror after he'd done my makeup, and I was just like, and he'd done it all with one sort of pencil. And I remember thinking, God, that is amazing what he's done with that one pencil. Like half an hour. He just did that one pencil, like my entire face, sort of using it as shading and God knows what. I mean, he was so, Tyen, such an incredible artist, I think, because he was a Vietnamese refugee. Right. He came over to Paris as a refugee, became the makeup artist for the opera, doing Nureyev and all the ballet, and that's why his makeup's so, you know, theatrical, I think, because he came from the opera, so everything is very like, and those incredible, you know, he put eyeshadow going up into your hairline, which is very like, you know, the ballet makeup, you know, and he'd tie your hair back in a tight bun and do all that sort of balletic, you know, all came from that. Yeah. And when I started working with him, it was when he'd stopped using, I think Serge Lutens had been doing all the Dior ads and Paolo Roversi, and then I can't remember who the other, anyway, but the photographs of me are the first ones when he became a photographer and the makeup artist for Dior. So I was the first. So when he was working with me, he didn't really know how to take photographs. He was sort of experimenting. And so we were like, it was just him and I in the studio for like weeks on end with his little spotlights, a bit like Hero. He'd point these tiny sort of in my eye line, I'd be sitting down and there'd be these tiny little spotlights and he'd just shine it right into my eye. He was so sweet, he'd get so into it that he'd be like running out of breath sometimes. He'd be like, just go. He just loved being the photographer and the makeup. And
that through his lens, that's enough to make one breathless.
Oh.
So, you know,
and we were very like, we got on very well. We were very like in tune with each other. We'd be in this little bubble of our own, just on our own. There'd be one assistant. There'd be no stylist. No, he'd do all the styling, everything. He invented the makeup. He designed the colours. He sometimes used to let me do my own makeup, which was kind of amazing. He'd go, "Oh, you do your foundation. You know what to do." I'd be like, "Really?" Anyway, and then he'd be like showing me his new colours he's invented, and then he'd be the photographer, and so it'd just be him and I, and then we'd be in there for like days on end, and then come out into this canteen, and it would all be a bit like too much reality. Want to get back into our little cocoon, you know.